Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So, check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Ernest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share to our podcast on all our social media platforms that we may be found on. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on IG. Everywhere you can look, we're there. So thank you guys once again for tuning in. And make sure you guys stay to the end of the podcast. I'm going to tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast for not doing anything. But you got to stay to the end in order to get that information. So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Miss L.A. Roberts. How are you doing?
I am doing amazing, and I'm trying to figure out how I can win the $100. Like, what do I have to do?
But you got to wait to the end of the show. You gotta wait till the end of the show, and then I'll let everybody know, including you. So you can't win too. I'm not biased. The guests can win too. So first of all, let me say thank you for being on. Because you could be doing anything else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and I definitely appreciate it. So thank you once again for taking out your time to be here.
You are welcome. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to grace your platform.
No problem. So first thing I want you to do me a favor, introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay, well, you know what? I do a lot of things, but let's just start with first who I am. My name is L.A. Roberts, and yes, that is my real name. It stands for Lachey Ann. It is on my birth certificate because I get that question all the time, right? Like, where'd you get L.A.? Well, my grandmother gave me L.A. Okay. I am an author, I'm an international speaker, I'm a radio personality. I am the founder of I Inspire Global, where ordinary people with extraordinary stories change the world.
All right, all right. So we know that this is who you are now, right? And I always say there's always a story behind the story. So who was LA growing up, and what was the transition that brought you to this space to what you do now?
You know what? Interestingly enough, LA is a little girl from the south side of Chicago. That, all right, yes, um, I'm a little girl from the south side of Chicago who was always into things, yet had a very tumultuous childhood. I grew up in a lot of abuse, physically, mentally, and I always knew that there was something else. So the hold on to, the LA, and I go back to people saying, well, how did you get to LA? Because it was just one day I sat down and said, one day I'm going to be something. I'm going to be somebody. And my name is going to be LA Roberts. And I held on to a dream of just doing more and helping people. I've always been the one to step forward and do something. If you were to know me when I was 5 years old, I'm blessed to still have friends that, that long, they're not surprised at all. They're like, oh, like this is just right up your alley. But I am just that little girl. And a lot of me is still her on the inside because I hold on to that childlike faith, which pushes me to my next level, which gets me to understand that I was built for what I'm doing right now.
Okay, okay. So I understand. Let's talk a little bit about your foundation. So I aspire global, right? So I'm interesting to know how even that came to about, and how do not only how did it come about, but even as it works out, how what do you do to inspire people and help them tell their stories?
Okay. So I actually have been, speaking for years and years. And one day I prayed and I asked God exactly what he wanted me to do because I felt like I was in a box, right? I felt like my audience was only a certain type of person. And so I wanted to expand because there's so many people around the world. And so I prayed and I said, God, what do you want me to do? And just as clearly as I'm talking to you, I heard have a global mindset. And I was like, okay, but what does that look like? And that was the end of 2018, I do believe. Yes, it was the end of 2018. And he showed me very quickly what that looks like because at the top of February 2019, I was invited to speak at the United Nations. So it was like, oh, this is what it looks like. This is what being global really looks like. And I thought that I would have to leave the country, to go and do this. And obviously not. Right. So what I Inspire Global actually is an opportunity for people to share their stories. So it's ordinary people with extraordinary stories that change the world. And what I assist people with doing is standing on top of this story and not standing in it.
Mm,
I allow people to move through their testimonies in such a way where they see themselves as being the victor and not the victim. So I am a believer that when you share your testimony, it's important for you to not bleed on other people.
right.
So a little while ago, I told you that I was a victim of physical and mental abuse growing up. Well, I can say that without crying. I can say that without, telling, or I can say it without feeling a way and making you feel a way about me saying it. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And be strong in it and letting people know it's okay. And so that's what I help individuals do. I help them be strong in their testimony and you're still here. So why not share it? But you got to be strong in it.
Yeah, and as a speaker myself, that's definitely one of the things that we're trained to do. Is like, don't speak on anything you haven't healed from. You know what I mean? Because you get to talk
Absolutely.
about it and you start crying. You can't be on the stage crying. You're supposed to be helping. You're supposed to be helping the next person. So if you haven't healed from it yet, you can't try to help somebody else heal from it.
And you know what's interesting? You actually could. You could cry as long as you can pull yourself out of it.
Hmm.
So I did a one woman show for 2 years. And it's just me, two acts, a singer, and a band. And I had to go through periods of my life that were very painful. Did I have to cry? Absolutely. Because I want to invoke emotion from you so that you can dig into what it is that you need to
Hmm.
dig into. But then once it was over, I went on to the next. That's a
Right.
skill. So
Yeah.
you can cry. However, if you're still crying when you get off stage, that's when you know you're not healed from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a balance somewhat of, or should I say it's a healing even in that, to be able to cry, because you have to have even some level of healing. You may cry from the experience but not cry from the hurt. You know what I mean? To the point that, like you said, you can cry to evoke your audience, but then when it's time to turn it off, okay, you can turn it off.
Yeah,
And it's, that's what I mean by, you're on the stage and you get to so emotional because you haven't fully healed, that now you're crying and they like, you can't even finish the rest of your rest of your
right.
message. So
And now
that's what
they're
I mean
hugging
by that.
you.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Can you make it? And you're like, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not the story to tell, boo. Don't tell that story.
Right, right, right,
Don't tell that story.
right. So I think that one of the, when we talk about telling our stories, especially as coaches and speakers, a lot of times we have to get us out of the way to an extent, and but I think that sometimes we don't give ourselves enough focus. Sometimes even when we focus on our audience, and I think that's where we make that mistake, where we want to help people so much that we try to help them with things that we haven't healed from yet.
Yeah.
But I think that we have to learn to put ourselves first, to make sure that we're healed and we're whole, before we go to take our message to an audience. And so just as a speaker yourself, what is one of the things or something that you kind of help your people to understand about putting themselves first or making themselves a priority, you know, before hitting the stage? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I always tell people, you can't do for others unless you first do for yourself. And if you're in pain and you're not taking the priority for yourself, then it won't happen without you, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
none of this will happen without you. If you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it won't happen without you. So what's more important? Is it important for you to run yourself into the ground and not be okay and not be healthy and not be whole? You know how many speakers and authors or coaches or whatever are completely breaking down because they're trying to chase the next and they're not realizing that you won't be doing anything, like anything at all unless you take care of yourself. So I always say you are first. Well, God is first, then you. Then everything else comes afterwards. And so when I am preparing to do a keynote or if I'm doing something, I always take that time beforehand and then I take the time after. Like I need to prepare because
Mhm.
honestly, and I don't know if it's the same way with you, but I have been in rooms that are emotionally draining and it's so many people and it's so much going on and you have to be on the entire time
Yeah.
where I have to just get to myself. I have to, because if I don't, I will completely crash. And so I use those examples for people that I talk to, and I'm really honest with it because it's happened to me. So I can tell you what I know, not what I heard. So I always kind of, stay in that vein.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's oftentimes, we use the analogy of the plane when it says put your mask on first, put your mask on first before you put it on the other person.
Mhm.
And it's because it's true. And even in that scenario, but also in everyday life, you can't help the next person if you can't help yourself.
Absolutely.
I'm a construction worker by day, and one of the things that they always tell us, when we're working like in the steel mills and things like that, which is where we work, there's a lot of gases and then and different things. So they always say if you see somebody go down just unexpectedly, do not run to them,
Mhm.
because if they went down because of a gas leak and you run into it, you're going to go down too. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, we have had the case where there were about 4 people that died because the one person went to help the next person and then the next person, and they all
Oh,
ran into into the area right after each other and passed away. But you know that's why we have to learn to take care of ourselves first and make sure ourselves are good first, and sometimes people won't always understand it. And so I remember I was listening to, I think it was a podcast or something I was listening to the other day, and it was a husband and wife. The therapist asked the husband and wife, what's your priority? And the husband was like, my kids, my wife, then me, then the job, whatever. And then when he asked the wife was like me, then my husband, then the kids, whatever. And so the husband was like, how you gonna put yourself before me? He kind of didn't understand it until she broke it down. Like, well, I have to be my best self before I can be my best for you and for the kids and for everybody else. And I think that's misunderstanding that people, not only do we have to understand that, but sometimes we have to let people know, okay, this is what this is. Whether it's our family, whether it's our co-workers, whoever,
yeah.
when it comes time for you to take that time for yourself, you got to take that time for yourself because no one is going to give you permission to do it. And then sometimes when you do it, then they're like, what are you doing?
Right. Right. And then how am I going to be able to be who you need me to be
Mhm.
if I'm depleted? My coach Lisa Nichols, she goes, you cannot serve from an empty cup. You really cannot. And I could be honest, I've been in positions where my cup was bone dry. Like there is not one bit of moisture. If you probably would have dropped a little bit of water in there, it might have cracked. Like I have been in that position where I've just been tired and depleted and overwhelmed and did not know. But it's about stealing those opportunities where you can have just a little bit of a little bit of time. Like I know schedules can be very hectic. I have a radio show. I do, like all types of stuff. And if I don't take 3 or 4 hours or something like on a weekend or something to get myself together, by the time I get to the last thing, you can look at me and tell
Mhm.
she's tired. And I don't you never want to show up like that.
Right.
You never want to show
Right.
up in that vein. Have I ever shown up in that vein? Absolutely. Have I been told you need to sit down? Absolutely. Did I
Mhm.
do it all the time? No. Did I learn? Absolutely. So,
Yeah, yeah, and one that's one of the things that I've learned. So I'm a PK, which is a
oh,
preacher's kid.
oh,
I
okay.
was
So you bad.
no, no, no. I was the good son,
Oh,
right?
says the bad son. No, I'm just playing. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm a PK, and so I grew up with pastors and also ministers in my family, watching them, and then later on, even after I became a minister and later on became a pastor, one of the things that I saw uh, with some of the people in leadership as the pastors were them putting so many people before themselves, and to its own detriment or to their own detriment at a point. And I remember even my mom, when my mom became pastor, the phone calls, all times of night, and people want to come over to the house all time of day, and her study trying to, be there for everybody to the point we were like, look, she's not coming to the phone. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we had to kind of step in, and she kind of fussed at it a little bit, like, no, but we was like, no, man, this ain't gonna happen. You know,
Yeah.
after 10 o'clock, do not call my mom after 10 o'clock. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? I
Right.
know
Right.
she'll answer and she'll pray and she'll do all that, but unfortunately, I picked up the phone. So you got to call back in the morning.
Right.
But I've seen that uh, so much over the years of people putting, everyone else before themselves and kind of sacrificing their own health and well-being for the people that they're trying to serve. And I'm glad
Yeah.
to see that in this climate that we're in now, especially being trained as speakers and ministers and people that serve in general, that we're learning to put ourselves first, to make ourselves a priority, so to speak, so that we're not always depleted, and unfortunately, we have to make sure that we watch the people we're around and
Mhm.
also the environments that we walk into, because sometimes the environment is not right, and like you said earlier, when you sometimes you can walk into some spaces, just be like, okay, you know I can already tell this vibe and this whole place is off, and then some of the people that you deal with, especially dealing with different personalities and things like that. You got toxic people, that just haven't been through, or should I say, haven't worked through the things that they need to work through. And then you got some that just comfortable being where they are and don't plan on changing.
Right.
So you have to learn to cut some of those people off. And so even just dealing with that, dealing with toxic people and toxic behaviors, or people with toxic behaviors, what would be some of the things that you know you may even encourage someone who you are working with on how to release, even some of their own toxicity, if that's an issue, but
Mhm.
definitely toxic people or people in their lives that just like, yeah, you got to let them go.
You know what's funny? Some people don't even know they're toxic. I mean, some people
That's
don't.
very true.
They don't know they're toxic. They have absolutely no idea that what they're doing to you um is not good, because they have been in it for so long that it's normal,
Mhm.
right? Dysfunction to some people is very normal. And so they don't know. So being able to recognize what does it make you feel good? Like every time I'm around you, I don't feel good. Like, I feel like I'm wrong, or we're having this conversation, I feel depleted, or I'm feeling like, I have to defend myself, or I'm trying to, protect myself all the time. If you're around those type of people, then you have to take a step back and wonder why you keep doing it, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is it about these particular people? Because some people feel like I need to be around them because I'm helping them.
Mhm.
In actuality, you're really not. And then you have to also ask, what type of behavior are you contributing to this relationship, which causes this to be okay? Because it's not always the other person. It's him, it's her, it's the truth. It's her, and the truth. It's him and him and the truth. It's something in the middle. There's something that you're contributing to make this okay, So you have to really ask yourself the hard questions. Why do I feel like this? Why does this person feel like they can do this, right? Sometimes you have to retrain people how to treat you. You have to
Mhm.
show them where you are now. You got to let them know, I'm not the little girl back in 84 you could talk to crazy. I'm grown. Like, I'm a real grown woman, and we're going to have a conversation. And so I just tell people to evaluate your relationships, evaluate who it is. And I also go by the model that titles don't make you entitled.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, Titles do not make you entitled. People feel like because I'm your mother, or I'm your father, or I'm your brother, or I'm your sister, or whatever, I can talk to any kind of way. You are to take this from me. And I always love this. People will be like, "What do you mean? Your mom, it says honor thy mother and father." And I go, it also says, do not provoke your children to anger. So let's even this out. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So let's even this out. So titles don't make you entitled, and I tell people that. So that's how I kind of guide it, and then we open it up and unpackage it that way because it's never one easy answer. However, I will release people. I've released people that I have been friends with for 15 years because my mental stability is more important than your comfortability.
Yeah, yeah, and I like what you said about the titles, especially when it comes to family. And I just say family as a whole, whether it's mom, dad, whoever,
Mm-hmm.
because if you haven't healed, then you're just toxic. And so you bring that to me, even as mothers or fathers, especially those who may have their own mother hurt or father hurt, and so they're bringing that their traumas and passing it on to their kids, and now they're taking that same emotions and same feelings that they have, and now they're putting it on you. If they haven't healed, then you know, whether
Right.
the mother or father, whoever it is, okay, I gotta keep my distance. And I
Yeah.
remember talking to someone not too long ago, and they have a sister, and no matter when they get together, they always end up getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, look, just pay attention to it, right? And I said, how long can you guys be in the same room before you start arguing? He said, maybe about 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, something's gonna happen. I said, so you need to be leaving after 5 minutes. Don't
Right.
wait for six
Right.
minutes. When they get to 5 minutes, okay, it's about that time. Let me go.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Because
Let
you
me
know
dismiss
Sheila about to
myself.
act up. You
Right,
already
right.
know. She about to cut up in about, okay, we gotta go.
Right. I always think about I think that was Denzel Washington in the one movie where he looked at his see how much time he got.
The equalizer.
Yeah, yeah, that one. He'd be like, yeah, let me get on up out of here, and that's a real thing. And I'm like, because you already know that. And it's not because you guys don't love each other, that's your sister, you love her, she loves you or whatever, but for whatever reason, whether it's your lifestyles or whatever, y'all always end up butting heads. So just leave before it gets to that point. And you don't necessarily have to leave altogether, but you need to leave the room, give you each other some space, and then
Right.
come back. But
Right.
y'all, if it gets to that 6 minutes, you know where it's headed. You know what I mean?
Now and you know what, and that's true. Like everybody got the family members. As soon as you walk in, you go, oh, here she come. Hey girl, how you doing? You all right? All right, I'm gonna go in here and get some sweet potato pie, real quick. And all right, and it's okay. It's really okay. You can love people and not allow them to drain you.
Mhm.
It is not your responsibility to assist someone to get through the trauma that they're not willing to go through the healing for. You understand what I'm saying? If they're
Mhm.
not saying, I'm trying to get better, and in turn, you're trying to help their trauma, and you getting traumatized. And so who's trying to help you out of your trauma? It's a whole thing. And nobody's perfect. Everybody has their things that they're going through. And your loved ones will help you kind of navigate and and love you through situations. However, it is ultimately your responsibility to do that for yourself. And so if
Mhm.
I'm dealing with a bad situation and I'm really in a place, I know I can't go to that outing because I'm not in a place to be there. So you have to make those decisions for yourself,
Yeah.
and don't be selfish in it either. Be honest. I talk to myself in the mirror. If I'm having a hard time, I literally will stand there and go, so why you mad? What is it? Let's work this thing out because we gotta get it. And at the end of it, I'm normally crying and I'm normally like, okay, or I'm making a phone call. You have the Girl Dad podcast.
Mhm.
About 3 or 4 months ago, I had a situation and I realized I needed to talk to my daddy. And I texted him, was like, can you talk? And I was like, I'm having an issue. And I texted him, he called me. And all of that weight that I was feeling came off of me because I needed to talk to my daddy. But I had to get to that point where I
Right.
was willing to say, what is it? And then, go through the healing process. So,
Yeah, yeah, and shout out to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. And I know it says right there, actually supposed to be to the girl too. I
There you
forgot to
go.
say that. But yeah, and I actually that's one of the things that I wanted to do even with that podcast is to, promote the voices of uh girl dads and share the stories of dads and their daughters. And even there's going to be a point where I start having, the daughters on to talk about their fathers also, and because I think it's I'm a fatherless daughter, not a fatherless daughter. I'm a girl dad, but I'm a um yeah, that's what I'm meant to say. Fatherless daughter advocate. That's what I meant to say.
Okay, okay.
And so, in case you don't know, if you haven't followed the podcast, the way I even got into podcasting was because I started a page on Instagram called Friends of Fatherless Daughters, and which I talked about, fatherless daughters, and kind of gave my advice as a father, as a girl dad, as a brother with five sisters, and watching my father's relationship with my sisters, and also with my relationships with the women that I dated, because going through that process, what I found out was every woman I ever dated was a fatherless daughter. And so it was like, okay, either I'm attracted to them or they're attracted to me. And so that's kind of what made me, go that way and start really looking into how can I help this community that's I'm connecting with for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And when I started that, I started getting phone calls to be on podcasts. And so that took me on that journey. And then after one such podcast, it was like, hey, you need to have your own podcast. And that kind of led to here, which eventually now have also led to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. So I'm real big on that, and then, so I'm glad even to hear you say that. To be able, because I think that's, and I don't want to change the subject, but
No, go ahead. Let's go.
I just really wanted to point that out of the importance of fathers in the lives of their daughters, and not just in the lives of daughters, also in the lives of their sons, but I think even more important in the lives of their daughters, because you do need to make those phone calls, every now and then. And so I wrote a book called The Four Core, which is the four core values that every daughter should get from her father, and is guidance, it's affirmation, love and affection, and protection. Right.
Mhm.
And so those are the four core values. And what I teach is not only do you need that from your father, but when the women started getting older and started dating, they still need those values. They just look to get it from a different person. So now you're looking to get it from your husband or your mate, but you still need it from your father. Probably just not as much because now you're looking for it from somewhere else. But those same values need to be poured into you as a woman.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's be clear. The daddy that I picked up the phone and called is my stepdad, not my
Mhm.
biological father.
Mhm.
My biological father was not in my life. My stepdad was, and then I also had a grandfather, lovingly known as my papa. So I had those men in my life that were able to pour into me. Um, Girls that have their daddies have an advantage, but they also do have other things that they desire. I almost told my age. I won't, but uh, and I almost slipped out. Did you see it? I was like, and then hmm. So I still needed to have the conversation. I still needed to pick up the phone. However, for those women that may be listening, like, well, my father is gone, or my father, was never in my life, there's still hope for you.
Mhm.
And it's not your fault that they were not there, and it's not your fault that they're not here now. There is still an opportunity for you to have a male figure in your life that would be willing to give you those four core values. And it's never too late to start that, because the only reason why we grew up is because time told us we had to. So a lot of us are walking around still little
Mhm.
girls or
Yep.
still little boys, and you may have the salt and pepper beard, or you may have grown up and become a beautiful woman like me. uh, However, there is still a little girl on the inside that desires that, but it's never too late to, build that particular relationship. And God will give you who it is that you need. I missed a lot of relationships in my life when my mother wasn't around. Hindsight, there were women that stepped up that I'm your mother, like, and
Mhm.
this is what I'm going to teach you. And then when my father, God gave me who I needed. So there's always somebody there. Just keep your eyes and your ears open for who it is, especially if you desire it, because God will give you the desires of your heart.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you had your stepdad, and that's another thing that I champion. I'm also a stepfather. I have one biological child, which is my daughter. At the time of us recording this, my daughter just turned 20. So she's away at college, so she's a whole grown person now.
Ah,
But I have four stepsons. And my daughter is the youngest of my five children. And so I always champion, the stepfathers or the step parents in general, because we took a position. I don't like to say place, because that's one of the things that I always told my sons. I'm not here to take your father's place, but I'm here to stand in the gap until he comes. Because he was around. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And
yeah.
so I think that's very important, and I definitely always champion, and even said it on a recording I was doing yesterday. Don't be afraid to be a step parent. Don't be afraid to stand in that gap, because that person needs somebody. And especially you have either one or two stories. Either you grew up with your parents, both, and you can give that same thing to someone else, or you didn't, but you could give someone else what you didn't have. Either way, you can fill that gap. And so I'm very adamant about, the step parents stepping in, and I tell my daughter's stepmom all the time. I'm so grateful for their relationship, especially now, because now she's going through some transitions, and her mom is not necessarily the best of friends,
Hmm.
but she calls her stepmom anytime. And sometimes her stepmom will call me, but like, hey, daughter, call me today, and she didn't
Right.
call me, and I'm like, how she call you and she didn't call me,
Because
but
you
that's
don't
their
have it like
relationship. Yeah, unfortunately, but I do get the calls when she needs some money. So
Oh, listen, and that won't stop. Like, that absolutely will not stop. I have a lot of close guy friends that are like my brothers. And one of my friends, he was actually on the phone with me yesterday, and he was like, you know, it's my daughter. I'm like, asking for money. She always do. I said, that's her job. Like, I don't understand what part of you got a baby girl
yeah,
and she gonna ask you for some money, like, like, don't act like you this is due. Don't do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Like,
I said that the only thing that changed, their age changed and their circumstances changed, but they're still the same.
oh, but that amount of money go up.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Oh, we've had that conversation. I'm like, look, you can't call me every day. You know what I'm saying? You got to make it stretch now.
It's like every other day. Okay, hold
Right.
on to it.
So, LA, real quickly, one thing I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your books, because I know I asked you before we started recording, and you mentioned that you are an author as well as like myself, um, and you have several books. So let's talk about your books real quick.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I have three books, and my very first book is a book that's dedicated to my grandfather, my papa. Um, it is just basically talking about my journey with him and his passing. You know, it's called From Breakdown to Breakthrough: Life After Death, and
Mm.
he's my co-author. That was a gift that I gifted him after he passed. I know he was smiling on the edge of heaven because now he's a best-selling author too. Like, that was something that I desired to have. My second book is The Root Cause: A Journey to Healing Your Inner Child. So it is talking about the things that we deal with as a child, and how we can kind of pull ourselves out of that. And then the third book is called Weight Training, WAIT. training, because there's so many people that I know personally, including myself, that is praying and waiting for something that just has not happened yet. However, you still believe. And what do we do in order to stay in that vein of belief, even when it looks impossible, even when things look like it's not going to happen? What will happen if you just wait to see, like when everything is going to open up? And there's personally something I've been waiting for that is currently blossoming very beautifully, and I'm excited about it. And I'm like, wow, God, this is why you made me wait, because I needed to get to a certain position in my particular life, in my healing and my womanhood, and everything, in order to be able to appreciate the gift. Because a gift given too soon can be a curse. So you don't want to get it too soon and you know, kind of blow it up. However, if you wait, then it'll be a beautiful thing. So those are my three books.
Yeah, yeah, and I like the name of that, the play on words for the last one, the weight training. I like that. I'm gonna have to look into that one myself because that sounds like an interesting read. So
Oh, it's good. It's good now. It's good now. I'm gonna tell you.
so let me say thank you for being on. Right, I thank you for taking out your time. I want you to have the last word, and I want you to leave us with some words of inspiration, motivation, however you feel. And definitely share with us where we can get your books at, and your social media handles where we can follow you. So I'm gonna give you a second to think on that while you're thinking about it. To my listeners, again, thank you guys for tuning in to the podcast. I would say to the workshop. So I want you guys make sure that you guys are checking us out on our website, the dealhealfulfill.org website, which is the company website, my company website, where you can find out more about me as a speaker, as an author, and also as a podcaster, or a workshop facilitator to come in to work with you in your school or your organization. Also, check out ebooks by ejames.com, ebooks by ejames.com, which our ebooks are available. One of them, which we talked about a little bit today, which is the Core Four, which is the four core values that every daughter should receive from her father, as well as males to men, and Forgiving Me, the Four Steps to Self Forgiveness is also available there. Also, I've been blessed to be a part of this organization called the Forgiveness Mission. You can find us at theforgivenessmission.com. And one of the things that we do, we hold free virtual workshops every quarter of the year. You have to go to Eventbrite to register, but we have these free workshops and we talk about forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, and just everything having to do with forgiveness and teaching forgiveness and what it means to forgive and who is for, because forgiveness is never for the other person, it's always for you to release yourself from those things that forgiveness holds us bound by. So I'm definitely inspired by that. Make sure you guys go check us out, because at the time you're listening to this podcast, either one just ended or one is coming up. So you can go to forgivenessmission.com and find out when the next workshop will be. Again, it is free and it is virtual. So make sure you guys are checking that out. And last but not least, I told you guys at the beginning of the show that I would tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. You can win $100 by joining our pot super subscriber contest. And what does that mean? You must first subscribe to our YouTube page, our Facebook page, and our podcast on Spotify. After you've done those three things, you text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. The contest is ongoing and is random, which means once you in, you can always win. You don't never have to re-up anymore. You in it, you can win $100 from the podcast from doing what you do anyway. And so make sure you guys again listen to the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, and then don't be selfish. Don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else, because I know that we're doing great things on this podcast, and I just want to make sure it get to as many people as it can. So, Miss LA, once again, let me say thank you once again for coming on and for sharing your expertise and your story with us. I definitely appreciate you taking our time to spend with me and my listeners. And I'll let you have the last word. So the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so used to telling people, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for allowing me.
It's always different on the other side of the mic, right?
I know. Here we go. So, as you all know, I am LA Roberts, and you can look me up on larobertsspeaks.com. All of my information is there. You can click to see what my products are. All of my books are there. The events that I have coming up are also listed there as well. My Instagram is L_A_Roberts, which I put right there. So it will not be hard for you to find. And then LA Roberts is my Facebook. So everything LA Roberts. And I always tell people, if you look up LA Roberts and it is not me, it is a phony. Okay. So look for me. Is me. Okay. So I would just say to you all to stay encouraged. There have been so many things that have happened within the last few years that may have put you flat on your back and you didn't know what to do. However, we have survived a global pandemic, meaning that you are still here, you are still alive, you are still breathing, and you are having the opportunity to watch this. You have your eyes, your ears to hear. You can walk or talk, or you're healthy. I don't know what your situation is. However, I know it can get better. So if you're feeling away right now and you're feeling like, things won't get better, or I don't know what to do, give it a little time. Okay. And I mean, it can happen suddenly. I always say suddenly there will be a shift, but it can happen today. Are you ready? Prepare yourself for greatness, and it will surely chase you down.
All right. And we can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys for tuning in once again to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, we'll see you guys next week. Be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.